We should get this show on the road. I just asked if we have a quorum because once again, they don't show me how many people are in the room until I click let's go live. We'll do it live. So it turns out we got 25 people in the room, but more will jump in as we approach the top of the hour, and all those people will feel left out, but that's what life is all about. Ella Thea says, please stop changing the times of your uploads. I pushed my upload back this morning for a couple of reasons. Instead of going at 11 Eastern, it went at noon. One of which was I was working on something else that I thought I might put up first, and then it fell apart. Technical difficulties. I'd blame my production crew, but production crew is me. Also, we did not do a live stream last week. It was Labor Day. For those of you who are not in America, you might not know that, but we've got a couple big holidays every summer that result in us having 3-day weekends. And basically, it's Memorial Day and Labor Day. And then, of course, the 4th of July is a big one, too, but that one floats. It tends to be on July 4th. So it may or may not help you with a weekend, but a lot of familiar faces in the room. Cyberdoc, Dan, Boyd, Fatty McButterpants, 858, Bill, Steve G, Daniel Kester's in the house, DePaul 31, Mindbend, Dead Dog Rising, which I think is an odd yoga pose. Good morning, Steve. I appreciate it. Georgiana Thornton, hey, from San Antonio. James Chisholm, good morning. Tyler Pasquale, hello from a sunny 90-degree South Carolina. We've got cold temperatures here. Well, comparatively, about 60, 62 degrees right now. So, hey, Daniel Kester and Mustang MG05 again. Good friends. Duncan Campbell, good morning, Steve. How has your week been? My week's been okay. I got to address something. I'll wait another 2 minutes before I address it. Michael Hoyland, I'm here too. Thank you for checking in, my friend. Dominic Campbell, what's the favorite car you've ever owned? If you go not looking historically at all the cars I've owned from now, but at the time I owned it, the car that excited me the most was my 1969 Dodge Charger I bought when I was 17 years old. That was a cool car. Bought it for $300. I told the story many times. Since then, I've had cooler cars. I currently have a Dodge Viper, and I've also got a Cobra backdraft, replica Cobra. I like those cars a lot. I can't pick a favorite. They're like my children. You wouldn't ask, which is your favorite child, would you? So don't ask me about my favorite car. Aviva Rabinowitz, good evening from Haifa, Israel. Thank you for checking in from so far away. Johnny Quest, good morning, Steve. Good afternoon, Steve, says Steve. And by the way, technically speaking, it is afternoon, depending on where you are, but that's where I am. Joop Turwin, hello from the Netherlands. EU, Christine Gagnon. Is that an emoji of popcorn, or is that a little like Pikachu or something? I can't quite see that. Good afternoon, Steve rocks in. And Mindbent says the watchers are flooding in. G Keyman 565 is making food. Making food. Oh boy, I've got to mention, and one of the reasons I pushed back to this morning's video from 11 till noon is the video I put up about Publishers Clearinghouse is doing so well. One of the reasons it was doing so well is that everybody was upset. I mean, you have no idea how upset people were that I had said that Ed McMahon had worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. He actually worked for a company called American Family Publishing. And this is all, 25, 30 years ago. So you can understand how you can get those things mixed up. And people got bent out of shape. I got angry emails. I had people who were irate. If they could have screamed at me, they would have. But I actually had a guy send me an email and insist I apologize and take down the video. And I thought to myself, apologize to whom? And I asked him, and he goes, Ed McMahon, first of all. I said, well, Ed McMahon died in 2009. I don't know where they buried him, but I'm not going to go apologize to a dead person. And then the guy said, well, American Family Publishing. So they stopped business. They went out of business in 1999, 26 years ago. I'm not going to go apologize to a defunct corporation and a dead man. Besides, I don't think Ed McMahon would be upset that we're misremembering him because he's more well-known than the company he worked for in that case. So who cares? But all the commentary underneath the video, of course, helps it on YouTube. So I'll admit, I was watching that in morbid fascination, but I did post a note this morning. I pinned it saying, just to be clear here, Ed McMahon worked for AFP, not PCH, and I'd apologize to each of them except they're both gone. So can't do that. So there you go. Richard Terhune says, no worries, Steve. Try not to worry. Padres says, I got several phone calls and texts from someone claiming to be from PCH. Funny thing is that there was a Chinese symbol in the number. Elathea, this is wild. Daniel Armstrong says, I want to see a Viper with a V12 engine, which would consist of two second-gen Pentastar engines. Huh. I know there have been rumors about bringing the Viper back. I'm not sure what they would do, but they could do that, I suppose. Dan Boyd says Ed is hefting a giant martini in heaven. I think he's got just an IV pumping it straight into his veins. Dougie Duhar, the driveway posts. And that's another one. I actually shot a video where I was going to react to these things. And I was having so much trouble with editing, and I'm not going to get into it now, but a lot of issues with the editing, and they were entirely operator error, which is me. But I had some people get angry about that video. And they're like, I can't believe you're accusing the guy. I even said in the video, I go, look, it's not the crime of the century. I'm just curious. Shouldn't the guy, as a courtesy, have told me he ran over my fence post? And I had several people go, but he didn't do any harm. Yes, he did. He bent the fence post, and then he bent it back. And if you sit there and bend a piece of metal, eventually it'll break. Second of all, he ran over my grass, and he put a track through the grass where the dirt has been pushed down. I got to fill that in now, because if I don't, it'll become a low spot. It'll collect water and it'll cause trouble. So yes, he caused some damage, but again, like I said, it wasn't the crime of the century. I was simply asking as a courtesy, should he have done something else? And the vast majority of people agreed with me, but I got a couple irate emailers, including one guy who actually said, Steve, take the video down. You look like an idiot because you've got a narrow driveway with no turnaround. What do you expect them to do? Number one, the guy backed up my driveway, so he didn't need a turnaround. Number two, my driveway has a turnaround. And number three, my driveway's not too narrow. It's 12 feet wide at its narrowest. So I don't know. I know some people probably would later say, oh, I was just joking. It's not a joke if the person you're telling it to doesn't understand it as a joke at any point in time. So there you go. Martin Godinez, good morning from Los Angeles. I apologize for mispronouncing your name, but I recognized it as something I've not seen before, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Scott Summers thought Ed was best known for Budweiser. I think Ed was just known as being somebody who was accused of perhaps drinking a little bit too much. Dan Boyd, how does one even fit one of those big, gigantic checks into the night deposit slot? Yeah, and of course, Happy Gilmore had a whole series on that where he's running around getting those big checks at tournaments and didn't have time to cash them, so he was stacking up in the back of his car. Oh, Richard Terhune says he did more damage to his truck. And by the way, I jokingly pointed out that the guy could have gotten in trouble for leaving the scene of a property damage accident. And I've had people say, but Steve, if the only damage he did was knocking your post down and he put it back up again, that's not damage. Number one, he bent it. Okay. Number two, he damaged my grass. Number three, he damaged his own truck. And believe it or not, and as the attorney in the room, I'm going to tell you, damaging your own property is still something that you might get in trouble for, leaving the scene of a property damage accident. And that's something that a lot of people go, wait, what? Absolutely. Absolutely. I've heard of a case before where a guy's in his own driveway and he's angry and he smashes his other car, like rams one car with the other and drives off. Someone calls the police, leaving the scene of a property damage accident. Trust me. So there you go. Butterpants is 12 feet wide is huge. It's huge and long. Roxton, way too many angry emails. I get them all the time. I try to just, brush them off. But when I get a few, I'm always kind of like, what? And by the way, if you said, Steve, didn't you know you're going to get a reaction? The FedEx video, yes. I never expected the reaction on the Publishers Clearinghouse video. You need to apologize to Ed McMahon. LGR FBS, hi from Sweden. Thank you for checking in, my friend. Is Sweden, are you the guys that have the A with the O at the top, little tiny one? It looks, and I think it's called an angstrom with that in your alphabet. I'm always curious about how you pronounce that. Daniel Kester says Ed McMahon also advertised Miller Lite. Miller Lite. Zafar Syed. Howdy, Steve. Howdy, Zafar. I love saying your name, Zafar Syed. Showstrom, if you taped a $5 bill to the bent post, how would you have felt? Oh, I'd take it, but I like I said, I was merely questioning whether he should have just said something. Just saying something goes a long way. Dominic Campbell, are you going to do a video about the 115 Ford recalls? All 115 in one video? That'd be a long video. Oh, Mike Lamb, I wouldn't expect anything from the driver. New spin, is that because of insurance? Because surely you can damage your own property if nobody else has any stake in what happens to it. Stop calling me Shirley. But it depends. It depends. Because what if somebody saw the accident and called the police? Some guy just rammed and they don't know who owns the car. And then the police respond and go, what happened? They'd have to investigate. And 3 hours later, you come back, oh, yeah, I did that. You know, and so there are reasons. That's one of, I'm making stuff up here, but there are reasons why they would, why they would want you to not drive away from the scene of a property damage accident. So Jason Brindamauer, or also known as Jay from Flat Rock, is checking in. Thank you, my friend. Believe in yourself. Hello, Steve from Napanee, Ontario, Canada. A? And an A to you, too. Yeah, Fatima Butterpants is Ed and Tonto, our professional sidekicks. Ella Theus is the only way is to never say anything, ever, and just sit in catatonic silence. And, of course, that's what you do if a police officer starts questioning you. You can sit there and go, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to remain silent. I'm going to talk. All that talking makes it sound like you're not so silent anymore. You can just sit there and not say anything. And the cop will figure out, oh, he's chosen to remain silent. Chiseled Rocks is a Dodge Viper EV cited for too loud exhaust in Minnesota. It wasn't a Viper. It was a Dodge. I think it was a Charger or Challenger, one of those modern ones, EVs. I'm not familiar with any EV Vipers, although I'm sure somebody's done that. But that would be a crime against humanity to electrify a Viper. Lewis Browning, we all need to send FedEx a video of the accident. Now, you know something? They get videos much better than that. Much better than that. G Keyman 565. I have a 150-foot driveway that is a big turnaround. The delivery trucks almost never use it. Well, what's funny is the ones who discover it, use it, and I have some regular drivers who show up and I watch them pull in, spin around, jump out, deliver, and take off. They never have any trouble at all. So, blah, blah, blah. It would be hard to smell alcohol in your breath if you don't talk. And see, that would obviously be a good reason to keep your mouth shut. Wouldn't it? Showstrom, there have actually been a number of cases in which people who just sat there in complete silence were given a psych eval because the officers were so concerned about their mental health. But at the side of the road? Because you could say one sentence. You could say, I choose to remain silent, and then shut up. I've seen someone sit there and repeat it. I'm going to remain silent. First Amendment, I'm going to remain silent. I've also seen someone yelling, I do not consent, like 300 times in a row. Just say it once. Oh, you only said it once. That doesn't count. You got to say it 300 times in a row. Dan Fissel, I recently watched an interview you did with Rossman from Rossman Repair Group. Definitely enjoyed that interview. Need more people challenging the right to own the stuff we buy. Yeah, I have people go, Steve, have you ever checked out this Louis Rossman guy? And I'm like, yeah, I've been on his show. Really? Yes, I have been. It was a while ago, though, so you're right. It was an old one. Dan Boyd, Louis Rossman is awesome. I like Louis. What I like about Louis, I mean, the guy knows his stuff. When it comes to repairing stuff, he's good. And along the way in his business, he discovered this problem with right to repair and he decided to make that like his personal thing. Right to repair. And I think more YouTubers need to pick up on something and go, this is my platform. This is what I'm going to do. You watch Miss America. I know no one does anymore, but back in the old days, and they'd ask them, if you win this contest, what will be your platform? And it's like, I want to end animal hunger. I don't want any animals ever to go hungry again. And somebody else gets up there and world peace, whatever. And so if Miss America candidates can do it, YouTubers can do it. And but he's doing it. And I appreciate that. LGRFBS is not sure how to explain the pronunciation of the A, angstrom, or the small A, or the big A. It was used in the series Stargate to symbolize Earth and Tellus. Yeah, and see, I was going to just let you know because in Finnish, they've got the umlauts over some letters, but they're actually considered different letters. They're not punctuation marks because in English, if you put the umlauts over an O, for instance, old school cooperate. You put the umlauts over the second O, so people know it's not cooperate. But there it's punctuation, but it's another story altogether. So Janie Seagrass, hey, all long time since I caught a live, and I appreciate that you did that, my dear friend. Sad Mountain Man, happy to see Steve live. And I'm happy to see a sad mountain man by, do you have to remain sad? Oh, Michael says an angstrom is pronounced like an angstrom. Oh, boy. Michael Hoyland says, though, in Stargate, it's actually more of a capital lambda with a circle above it. Well, what made me think of it, I was watching Naked Gun, the original movie, the other day, and the California Angels baseball caps have got an A with a halo around it, but it looks kind of like an angstrom. I thought, I wonder if anybody else has noticed that or commented on that. I'm sure they have, but. Kip Moore, I was recently in Michigan staying at White Lake. A couple of locals told me the police can make you ID for any reason without reasonable articulable suspicion. Is that true? I don't believe that Michigan is just a straight up ID state, but they don't need much to ask for ID. And so, for instance, if you're in a car and you're driving, yeah, they can ask you for ID. But yeah, I hate to even get into that because unfortunately, there's areas of that law where you can actually explain the truth and people will still argue with you about it. And so, a while back, I decided to avoid some of those topics. Daniel Kester, is a Canadian robot lady going to join us today? I feel bad. I normally shoot her a note to double check. I will ask her. Let's see here. I did text her earlier this week. And yeah, last weekend, like I said, was Labor Day. So I didn't do a live. And I don't skip all holidays, but I skip some. Because I don't know who will show up. Most people might not be around on the Sunday of Labor Day. I'm going to take off my watch. Which, by the way, when people ask me about the watch, my previous watch was a Breitling Navitimer. This is a Breitling Montbriant Olympus, but it is a Breitling. And I had somebody send me a note, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you got rid of the Breitling. What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "No, I traded a Breitling for another Breitling. I still have them both, but I'm saying like on the wrist, I can only wear one at a time. Like really, I should come out here all blinged up wearing watches on each wrist." Jason Brindamar, Snickers is a sandwich. Under some legal definitions, I assume it probably is. Lewis Brown, he's asking me about a barrister wig. And Lewis, I got the wig and I also got a styrofoam head upon which to display it. But sadly, there's only so much room on my set. And I'm not going to put the wig on because I don't think the comedy would be worth it. So I appreciate that though. Dan Boyd, I haven't worn a watch in decades. I've had young folk tell me, why would you wear a watch? You can always just pull out your phone. So I pull out my phone, and if I don't have it screen locked, I can look at it. I don't screen lock my phone, but if your phone is screen locked, can you tell time? But even so, you still got to pull it out. And I like to be able to go, oh, to see the time. That's not a lot of work. Not a lot of work. So Chris Better says Snickers is my neighbor's dog. Okay, your neighbor's dog is not a sandwich. Stephen Martin, not Steve Martin, but Stephen Martin. Good afternoon, Mr. Lehto. With a V, I appreciate that you spell your name that way. Although you're free to spell your name any way you want, but thank you for checking. I appreciate that. Mexican Specs in the house. Before you ask, I'll tell you today it's green. I rotate through the cup colors. Ella says, I saw you mention on a watch Reddit thread where people were asking what watch you wear. I hope they know about the new one. I hope they know about this one as opposed to the other one. Otherwise, it'll be outdated. I'd hate to have that happening. Reddit. Oh, boy. Cyberdox is a pocket watch and a gold neck chain is where it's at. Yeah, you need one of the big ones, like Flavor Flav used to wear. He's the guy who wore those, right? The big clock, like this big. Why not? Jay Klein had been wearing a watch since I was 12. I had a watch when I was younger, and then went a few years without wearing one. But as an adult, you pretty much need to know the time once in a while. 4, public safety, Chris Ryder. Hey, I caught a live stream. Yes, you did. Richard Terhune suggests that younger people might not be able to read an analog clock without digital numbers. What time is it? Well, the big hand. Mexican spec. Too bad they don't make that cup the color that is my avatar. Hang on, let me hold it up to your avatar. It's close. It's close. This is close. It's getting a lot of sunlight. Hang on. Is there a way I can get it to where it's not? It in real life it's close, but there might be some interpretation error between the camera and so on. Janice Ellery, I still own some old wind-up watches. Well, this watch right here is not electric. This watch or electronic. This watch actually has a winder inside of it. It's called an automatic. As long as you wear it often enough and you move your hand from time to time, it'll wind itself. Blah, blah, blah. Is it true that not one member of the Chicago Transit Authority had a watch or wore one, and that's why they want to know if anybody knew what time it was? I bet they still don't know. Of course, 25 or 6 to 4 also showed some confusion in time. So Larry Abney, why do so many lower state court rulings get overturned? Only because that's the illusion. There are so many lower court rulings that are never appealed. And so I would love to see the numbers on it, but I suspect that the number of appealed cases is in the single percentage points. And that the vast majority of them are not appealed. And so the few that are go up, and they go up for a reason, and those are the ones that get spun around. So Iggy, RLK, I caught a live stream, SHOU, and then hit enter a little bit too soon. Richard Tuhun used military time. Yeah, Chris Better at the tone, the time will be. You could actually call time. The good old days. There's also dial a joke. You could actually call a phone number and there'd be somebody tell a joke. It was recorded, but and they were usually stupid. But the phone company is trying to find ways to get people to use their phones. Devin Bound, Pink Floyd knows time. So does Steve Miller, although he said it's slipping into the future. I personally think it's slipping into the past, but I guess that wouldn't have worked. Dan Boyd says the court proceedings compelled them to shorten the band name simply to Chicago, similar to Grand Funk Railroad, simply becoming Grand Funk. But we've talked about that ad infinitum. Christine Gagnon, I had a self-winding dress watch with a lobster clasp. Great for daily use in any attire. Just like a French manicure, it's like grabbing your keys, purse, and glasses before you leave the house. The Misty Kushner, have you ever viewed vintage watch reviews on YouTube? Yes, there's a guy, I wish I knew his name. I think he's in Switzerland, but a guy with an accent, but he speaks English. And he'll take a watch like a Breitling or a Rolex or something, and all you see is his hands as he's dismantling the watch. And then he cleans it up and reassembles it and puts it back together again. And you see how complex these things are. It is utterly amazing. And to have that kind of skill is impressive. Hang on. I know it's 2 weeks ago, but the last time I was here, had a bit of a dry throat that bugged me. So trying to get ahead of it. Cyberdoc says there's a car repair guy, Casey, I think, who does watch repair videos. I've seen a guy doing that too, who does car stuff and watch stuff. John Michael Carmen says, my watch flashes the word now. It wouldn't even need to flash it. It would just say now, and it would be correct all the time. Vinny Sluga, my dog has cancer, thyroid cancer. I'm sorry to hear that. I think you mentioned a couple weeks ago your dog was sick, you have my sympathy. I'm very sorry to hear that. I love animals, and I know how difficult it is to be caring for one that is sick. Padres says I knew someone that repaired a grandfather clock or grandfather clocks. The amazing thing is grandfather clocks have gotten so out of vogue. I mean, I think they're cool, especially when you can see the mechanism and the ones that actually work off the big weights. I think those are so cool. But the thing is, if somebody said, "Hey, Steve, do you want a grandfather clock?" It's the old style one. It's going to clang every hour on the hour and then every half hour. I think, something. I think I can live without that. And so when I was growing up, my mom had a collection of antique clocks in her living room. I think it was 4 of them or 5 of them that chimed the hour at the top and once at the bottom. And they would just sit there and just around noon, they'd start going off. They're all off by, a few minutes each. And it was just a cacophony throughout the house. And don't forget, they did that at midnight. So you learn to sleep through it. Elliot Polach, do you like the Chambers brothers? Do you think they know anything about time? Well, time has come today, of course. I only know the one song, though, and that's kind of sad. They probably have other stuff. But Time Has Come Today is a classic song. It's like the Ides of March with Vehicle. Just one song, a great song, way ahead of its time. It stood out, and what happened to them? So there you go. Sad Mountain Man, a cuckoo clock. I've never had a cuckoo clock. I think my grandmother had one. And it's kind of funny because I remember that the weights on it were little pine cones. I just never really understood them. Jason Brendamauer, I vacuumed over 2,000 yellow jackets. Did you count them? Getting into my house this weekend, didn't get stung yet, but I'm allergic. I hung the vacuum from a mic stand. I bet they're angry in there. Just hope they can't get back out. Dimebag Coins. Hi, Steve. Hi, Dimebag Coins. Elliot Pollock says it could be a cacophony as opposed to a cacophony. Hobie Jackson says my father's talents included repairing grandfather clocks. Daniel Kester, done any canoeing this summer? No, I never got the canoe out. It's in my basement. The canoe is in my basement. I did go over to the Honda motor and pull it through a couple times just to keep it oily. Doesn't matter. That thing will start anyways. David Peterson, grandfather clocks remind me of the TV series Dark Shadows. DePaul 31, I've got the original Omega chronograph watch the astronauts wore to the moon. Remember that? They it was the pen that someone took to the moon, or Tang, what they drank on the moon, Janie Secrets, what about those German clocks where the people would rotate out? It's kind of like a cuckoo clock mechanism, and it's often a little house or a little chalet, and instead of a cuckoo clock with a cuckoo coming out, there's a bunch of people that come out, and occasionally they come out hit things or knock bells or something. So Mark Miller, hey, it's a happy Sunday, 77 outside, 80F in the office. Dude, AC. I got 2 words for you. A-C. Oh. Janice Ellery, don't forget the vampire. Barnabas Collins from Dark Shadows. Mexican Specs, I also have a clock that wakes me up right at 9 a.m. It's the cat meowing at the door for his food. Once the cat realizes that you respond to that, he'll start showing up a little bit earlier each day. He won't be stupid and try it at 6 a.m., but he'll try 8:55. And if that works, then he'll go 8:50 and then 8:45. And eventually you will be getting up at 6 a.m. going, wait, I thought we fed you at 8 or 9. It was 9, wasn't it? Oh. So Jason Brindamauer says he didn't count them, but it was a 3-inch layer in the bottom of a 4-gallon shop vac. The spinning inside killed them. There you go. Yeah, that's an interesting way. I had wasps building a monstrous domicile inside a shed years ago, And I waited till the evening and opened up the door, and I had one of those big things of wasp sprays. It's like, stand 30 feet back and shoot. And oh boy. But I took care of him. Elliot Polach, I'm Czech. Have you ever been to the Prague and seen the astronomical clock? No, I have not. I'll have to check it out. Excuse the pun. It was unintentional. I've been to Switzerland, France, and England, but that's my extent over there. So it sounds fascinating. Dan Boyd suggests a squirt bottle on a morning cat. Problem is the cat's outside the door. You got to open the door up to get at the cat, don't you? So, Iggy, RLK, pneumatic clocks are cool. I'm not familiar with a pneumatic clock. Janie Seagrass had a crush on Barnabas. Those vampires could be sexy. Valentinius 62, the gentleman's watch service, is the guy with the English accent. Yeah, the guy I'm talking about, it's not English. It sounds vaguely German. So that's why I'm thinking he might be German or Swiss. So David Peters says, I've never been to Spain, but I kind of like the music. For public safety says, I live in southern Indiana where they have the second biggest clock in the nation. It does not actually work, but still somehow it's correct twice a day. 858 Bill finds the cuckoo clocks to be creepy, just like those little monkeys with the symbols. Daniel Armstrong, have you ever watched one of those Foucault pendulums knock over the pegs? You mean the ones that are really, really long and as they go and the Earth rotates, they start going a little bit off axis? I have, yes. Fascinating. Padres says the clock at our courthouse was destroyed by Helene. I thought maybe it got struck by lightning in that movie Back to the Future. John Michael Karma says he found a watch at a Salvation Army for $5. It was a Scuba Pro, and he sold it on eBay for $750. Wow. Yeah, on eBay nowadays, the $750 watches generally are there's so much stuff out there that's misrepresented or so on. Casey, Jimmy, I've always been a watch nut, and I bought a Bulova Accutron Space View as a teenager. You could see it and hear it running with its tuning fork precision. I remember the name Bulova Accutron. Accutron. Is there anything more accurate? How could there be? It's an Accutron. We got to watch. No, you don't. There's nothing could be more accurate than an Accutron. How it is. Lion Zookeeper says the clock outside of the Bavarian Inn in Frankenmuth is pretty neat. Frankenmuth? Huh. I'm not familiar with the clock outside the Bavarian Inn. I'm familiar with the Bavarian Inn. I used to work in Frankenmuth years and years and years ago. Radio station I worked at moved there for a couple of years. They're not there anymore, I don't think. But it was WKNX Frankenmuth after it had been WKNX Saginaw. Janice Ellery, any other ELO fans here? Any recent news on how Jeff Lynne is doing? I have not. I'd be fascinated to hear because I did see him perform last year in Detroit, and then this year he was supposed to perform his final series of shows, and I believe he canceled some or all of them due to his health. And it's unclear what the health situation was, but that was that. So, Vienticus Prime, a precision-o-matic could be better than an Accutron. I don't know. Which is better to be precision or accurate? It's not Mio 7 had an armatron. Armatron. What's it do? Well, it's kind of like an arm. Okay. It tells time as well as your arm does. Well, you often have a watch on your arm. No, no, not the watch, the arm. Oh boy. Dan Boyd, my grandfather, sold both of the watches and clocks. Back in the days when clockmakers and watchmakers made the same things. I've been places before. They have got a Breitling clock on the wall. Airports, especially down in the Caribbean, often have clocks on the walls that are Breitling. I would love to have a Breitling clock, but I've seen them on eBay and they want so much money for them. It's absurd. But don't be surprised if one day, kind of near the lawyer dog sign, if a Breitling clock doesn't show up on the set, because I just finally said, screw it, I got to have one. Say, have you ever owned a Timex or a Casio? Don't think I've ever owned a Casio, but I have, in fact, owned a Timex or two. Yeah, the Vienticus Prime says, I like how you tilted your head to read my name. You kind of have to, because you're reminding your brain that, okay, that appears to be upside down and backwards. So it's reverse mirror. Oh boy. Elliot Pollock, they move via an astrolabe like dial on a calendar dial below it. I missed the first half of your statement, but an astrolabe, of course, is a fascinating device, and it got Homer Simpson in trouble once. One of my favorite episodes of The Simpsons. Scott Summers says, don't remember if the Friday video, if you or YouTube ended the video before you were able to finish it. Well, I discovered that the first upload was missing a portion. So I took it down and I re-uploaded it. And I said, would somebody please remember to remind me to explain this during the live stream? I don't know what happened to it because the video is 15 minutes long and I uploaded it. And normally I check and I often will play a piece of it. And then I'll also sometimes watch a minute or two, make sure it's uploaded properly. And I never have problems. And so I upload it and I'm going about my day, and at 7:05, I got a note from somebody who goes, hey, Steve, that's a little weird ending you had on that video on your backup channel. And I went and looked, and the last 5 minutes were gone. And it cut me off mid-sentence. And I'm not going to end the video like that. So I went, I'm like, And I went back and looked, and so I to be on the safe side, I re-rendered the video and re-uploaded it. I think it went live around 9 o'clock or so, but it's back up. And it was me just simply talking about music. So there you go. Daniel Armstrong, I had a Timex Iron Man, but my skin ate the stainless steel plating off it. Yeah, that's one of the Timexes I had. There was a Timex Iron Man watch that a lot of runners used back in the 80s and 90s. And before I started getting into nicer watches, I actually used to wear sport watches. I still have a couple sport watches. I'm not sure what brand they are, because I just wear them when I'm running or biking or something. But DePaul says the National Watch and Clock Museum in Pennsylvania is a nice place to visit. I believe it's near the city of York, PA. Carl's Corner, did I miss anything yet? LOL. The only thing you missed was the cup is green. So now you're up to speed. Janice Ellery, if we're really going old school, how about a sundial? Yeah, calibrating those is kind of tricky, but you can do it. Vienticus Prime, I still wear the same Casio G-Shock watch I bought back in 1995. Say Oz, Bill Clinton wore a Timex Ironman. I seem to recall that they kind of had a bit of a folklore thing about Bill Clinton being a runner and making the Secret Service guys go running with him, but I'm not sure how much running he ever actually did. Ram 50 V8 high. Greetings from sunny Harrison, Arkansas. Christine Gagnon, we used to call the operator for the correct time. And of course, you could simply call it the number for time. At the tone, the time will be 1:36 and 45 seconds. Probably 46 seconds. I think it went on the evens. Oh, Elliot Pollock says my first message was just that the astronomical clock was built in the 1400s on the old Prague Square and showed the sun, moon, Jesus, the apostles, devil, and other figures to show government agnosticism. So, what did Jesus come out at noon and the devil came out at midnight, or how does that work? I'm just kidding. MHOH says Bill Clinton did run for governor, president, and so on, at least a couple times. Oh boy. Lion Zookeeper says the phone number for time was 2341212. I remember the 1212, and I'm wondering if that varied from place to place because the 234 doesn't ring a bell, but it's been a couple years. Oh. Jason Brindamar, you have a collect call from Hey Mom, movie's over. Come pick us up. Would you like to continue? Janice Ellery, does anyone else think switching clocks back and forth twice a year is outdated? I like daylight savings time. I'm sorry. I know I'm in the minority on that one, but I actually like it. But hey, what do I know? Chris Potts is the 1212 sounds right. Yeah. But I'm not sure about the 234. Ram 50 V8 says in Champaign, Illinois, the time and temp number was originally sponsored by Airway Shopping, then later by WLRW Radio. I don't remember being sponsored. I just remember being a service of the phone company. I think they were making money because you made the phone call. So I don't know. Ginny Seagrass, maybe that's why the devil went down to Georgia because he wasn't wanted in Prague. MHOA, you like daylight savings time? Unsubbed. I'm gonna start getting emails. Steve, why do you hate non-daylight savings time? What's wrong with you? Oh, 858 Bill, who remembers when phone numbers started with letters like Garfield 1, 2323? No, I remember that. MI2 was Michigan, was 642. So if your phone number was 642 1000, you go, my number's Michigan 2 1000. And everyone knew that the first two letters. And so there's that song. My phone number is Beechwood 45789. Beechwood. Well, that's not a number. Yeah, but BE would be a number on the phone, the two numbers. So that was old school. Elliot Polak says Prague is rated as the number one most atheist country in Europe, but not the world. Interesting. I always pictured a heavy Catholic presence over there, but again, I've never studied this. So Roxanne likes DST because it reminds her to change the batteries in her clocks and her smoke detectors. 50 Viet, I remember when he had year-round daylight savings time during the Nixon era. I forgot about that. Canadian robot ladies in the house. Does anyone know what time it is? Well, it's 1:41 where I am, but I know it's a different time where you are. But thank you and welcome to the show. You will be greatly appreciated and lauded for being here. And I'm sorry, but I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, so I missed your note to me saying she's headed right over, and here she is. So take some of the load off my shoulders. Oh. Fatty McButterpants, MI5 9807 was the phone number of my dad's Esso station. Janice Eller, if I could catch time in a bottle. Jim Croce. Steve, no daylight savings here in Arizona. Yeah, and I look at the maps of where the timelines are, and some of them make no sense at all. Where a state's got like one little corner cut out that's a different time zone. John Michael Carmen, my cats want to eat earlier when it gets darker earlier. I remembered that about my dogs too. For them, they don't watch a clock. They watch the daylight hours. Hey, it's getting dark. It's dinner time. Come on, man. Come on. Where's the food? Where's the food? $858 Bill says, hey, in Australia, it's already Monday. Oh boy. The lucid dog. How does the world handle daylight savings time? I know it's largely an American thing, but I think that it does exist elsewhere. But you have to understand that America is so large that, like the 800-pound gorilla. If we do something, other people either do it or they tolerate it. And it's kind of like, hey, guess what? So for public safety, says my cat yells for food on every hour. Every hour on the hour? You got a cuckoo cat. Code Meester beats the 10, 10, 220 commercials back in the day. I said that I was kind of befuddled by the business model of having a company like, Publishers Clearinghouse giving away money to talk to you about buying magazines. And I think it's even, if you said, Steve, what are like, okay, that's a weird idea business wise. Name a weirder one. Having Carrot Top do commercials to encourage young people to make collect calls. I it must have worked because they kept doing it. But seriously, I don't. I'd see those commercials, and I'd want to punch the TV set. But then I realized, oh, but they're not aiming these at me. So when I watch an ad that makes no sense at all, I have to go, okay, but was it aimed at my demographic? And quite often it wasn't. And I've told the story before, but a very good friend of mine was watching television, and he was an older fellow. And he turned to me and he said, I wish Cadillac would get rid of these stupid ads. And he was talking about back when Cadillac was using Led Zeppelin in their ads. And I go, why is that? And he goes, I hate this music. And I go, guess what? And he goes, what's that? And I go, they don't want you buying their cars. They want me buying their cars. And they were trying to, because Cadillac was getting known as an old person's car company. So they're trying to bring in a slightly younger demographic. Unlike, the Cadillac's the last car before you are actually driven to the cemetery in a box. So yeah, I pity the fool. China has no daylight savings time because the whole nation is on one time frame. People in the West get short end of the stick, waking up in the dark. And by the way, time is just an illusion anyway. I mean, it's just, I'm sure that they just go, okay, sun rises around here, sun sets around there, but it's basically, sunrise to sunset. So Terry Rose's Carrot Top is the host of What's Eating You traveling exhibit. He's still employed. Never understood that concept. 858 Bill, did you ever mail away for 8 albums for a nickel? I never did that, but I know people who did. And I know people who did that and then just spent like the rest of their teen years dodging phone calls and hate mail going, where's the rest of our money? Because, yeah, Valentinius says they used the Klondike phone prefix for 60s TV shows because it didn't exist. Because, of course, Klondike 5 would be 555, which is the number they always use in TVs and TV shows and movies. So Janie Seagrass says England does DST. Alethea, can you confirm? Sad Mountain Man stock exchanges. Yeah, think about that. The stock exchange in New York, and there's also the Tokyo, and there's one in London. They open and close when they open and close, and nobody's going, "Hey, you guys should open and close on our time." So, believe in yourself says, "Did you know that Russia also only has one time zone?" Doesn't surprise me. Seems kind of odd though. I pity the fool says Carrot Top has a residency in Vegas with daily shows. That's one I think where people probably go to see him because of the name recognition. Although I admit I've seen some of his stand up years ago. I remember seeing him on something, and he was mildly funny. Um, but the bigger joke was just simply that he called himself Carrot Top. So, 4 public safety says my best friend was in a band that sold over 7 platinum albums. I'll never forget the day we heard his music played on the classic rock channel. What was the band? I'm curious to know. I've known a couple people who were in bands, like record contract type bands. So, yeah, Canadian Robot Lady says, don't forget, at one point in time, you get LPs, CDs, 8 tracks, and I believe even cassettes from the, was it Columbia? The company that did that? Uh-oh, hang on a second. Is this thing straight? Which way does it go? This way? Right there? There we go. The only reason that bothers me is I shoot the videos and it's perfectly straight in the videos. But every single time I do a live stream, I'm often messing with this stuff. And so occasionally it's off and I'm like, oh, it bothers me. So what are you going to do? Ram 50 V8, speaking of publishers, Clearinghouse, do you remember the Harriet Carter flyers in the Sunday paper? No, I don't. And I delivered the Sunday paper for years. So I just don't remember seeing those in there. The big insert you had to deliver. What a nightmare. Believe in yourself. Yeah. Columbia House ordering, fulfilling the agreement, canceling, and doing it again. Oh, M. Coble. Don't forget about the AOL CDs, which were the family coasters. I would. I wonder if anybody knows. Could somebody look up and see if anybody has an estimate as to how many AOL CDs were created and shipped out? I bet there's billions of them, if not hundreds of millions. I'd be shocked if it wasn't over 100 million. Shocked. Jason Brindamar, I've got my dad's working reel to reel in his collection. I actually have some reels that go on reel to reel players. I've saved them. I forgot what's on them. I got some audition tapes on them, and I've also got some other things on them. I mentioned in the thing I did with Mark Volman of the Turtles on my backup channel that I have tapes of people saying things like, "Hi, this is Mark Volman of the Turtles, and you're listening to Steve Lehto on WTRX." I've got tapes like that, which I'd like to get digitized someday, and maybe I will. But as of now, they're just on reels. For public safety, says the band was called Days of the New, but then they formed the band Tantric. Okay. Ram 50 V8, I've still got the AOL floppies. I forgot about that. There was a time when America Online was just getting big and some people didn't have disk drives. Not the CD drives. So they needed to get the floppies. Oh, Canadian Robot Laces with K-Tel compilation albums. No, we had those too. K-Tel. K-Tel would get the rights to a bunch of songs, and I don't know. I'm sure somebody else did it, and they just marketed it as K-Tel. But the K-Tel hit collections, and they'd advertise them heavily on TV and try to get you to call in and order them. And so K-Tel, America Online is what we're talking about with the CDs. And the CD was an introductory CD they'd send to you, and it says like comes free with 100 hours. And so you take the CD, you stick it in your thing, you hit play, you run the program, it loads it onto your computer. You then type in your credit card number, a bunch of other information, and then they give you 100 free hours of access or whatever it was. It changed over time. And then eventually, when you ran out of the free time, they started billing you. And that's where the tricky part came in, because trying to cancel AOL was harder than like splitting an atom with no tools. So yeah, Alethea confirms there is, in fact, daylight savings time in the UK also. Padre, I still have an 8mm reel-to-reel movie projector. Bingo. Dead Dog Rising says, quick answer. Google says over 1 billion AOL CDs were made and distributed as far as AOL goes. 1 billion. Oh. Canadian Robot Lady says, never heard of that in my neck of the woods. So what was the first internet service that was commercially available to the average person on the street, where somebody who just got a computer because their nephew told them to, and they figured out how to plug it into the phone jack, and so now they've got a connection. And how do we get on the internet when we've never been on the internet before in Canada in the 1990s? And I'm wondering how that was. I'm sure there had to be an equivalent of that, right? M. Colba does say that other sources are now confirming over 1 billion CDs were made. Wow. Daniel Kester, AOL floppies, 3.5 or 5.25. I'd have to guess they're 3.5, but maybe they had 5.25. I don't know. I seem to recall seeing the 3.5 cell. Jay Klein, my first computer came with 2 years of CompuServe. CompuServe. For public safety, so some folks still have AOL emails. I know. I see them all the time. And I've mentioned before jokingly AOL as an email, and they're like, no, I still have it. I'm like, hey, if it's free, there's nothing wrong with that. But as Brianna CC points out, AOL was a subscription you can't cancel. Oh, no. And I mean, famously, you could call and go, I want to cancel. No. I want to cancel. Why? I don't like the service. Okay, we'll give you another 100 free hours. No, I don't want it. Cancel. I'm sorry, but I can't cancel your service. You need to speak to a supervisor. And they put you on hold for like 15 minutes. The person in the next cubicle then picks up and goes, what can I do for you? I want to cancel. Why? I don't like the service. We'll give you another 100 free hours. No, I want to cancel. You need to speak to a supervisor. I thought you were a supervisor. No. You got to speak to... Fatty Butterpants says, it took 100 hours to download a 1-minute video clip. Yeah, and it took you 300 hours to cancel. Oh, boy. Marlon S. says the Anthropic suit should have been more. The funny part is I might be a member of the class. I don't know yet. I submitted my information yesterday. We'll find out. Fatty Butterpants, the first computer was an HP 286. 286. You could watch that thing think. So, Brianna CC says, Steve Lehto, you're the best. No, Brianna, you're the best. I appreciate that, though. Thank you very much. Elliot Pollock says, Interconnections Ontario, Netcom Canada, and UUNet Canada. Interesting. Jason Brindamar still has the vacuum running and is still getting yellow jackets right now. It's nonstop. They might never end. You might clear out North America of all its yellow jackets. Padre, my first home computer was a Radio Shack Coco 1. Coco 1. Johnny Z. Fradley, AOL, always offline. You know, and David Zernansky actually touches on something I was about to say. There's actually places in the United States where AOL is not a local call, for example, much of the state of Maine. But worse, even if it was a local call, AOL, I'm taking these off, so if the sound goes off wacky, please let me know, because I wouldn't know otherwise. Where if it tried to call on numbers local and it couldn't get through, it'd call another number. And it would go down this list until it eventually would jump to another potentially non-free phone call. And I remember people complaining all of the time, saying, I programmed it to local phone calls, and now my AOL bill's normal, but my phone bill's out of control because they're saying I'm making these long-distance phone calls and staying online for hours and hours and hours. And I was, but I didn't realize I was making a long-distance phone call. And the problem, of course, is buried deep in the terms of service was that this could do that. And they were constantly adding more local numbers. And I remember there being times where they'd run out of numbers, they'd add a bunch more. and that it became a non-ending fight. But I remember when it got to the point where you could actually get just internet service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they weren't charging you by the minute. Mark Miller started with a Commodore 64. Janice Ellery says you can cancel AOL, it just requires an act of God. Elliot Polach, we had Bell South, now AT&T, for our 56K dial-up service before I graduated high school in Western Kentucky in 2009. Weird noises those things made as they barked back and forth. Steve, don't nobody pick up the phone. I'm on AOL. And worse, if you forgot to shut off call waiting, that gets screwed up too. William Page says we can start now because we've been just sitting here waiting for you, my friend. The lucid dog. How do you find time to be a lawyer? Well, with daylight savings time, I save so much time that when I'm done shooting videos and driving around in my various cars and mowing my lawn and shaking my fist at the FedEx driver, I practice law. Somehow it works. I am one of those guys in my entire life. I've always been doing several things at once. I've never called it multitasking, but I also write books, right? I write articles for magazines. I write stuff for, the internet. I remember back when I was writing books, people go, "How do you find time to write books?" I don't know. I just do. Same way I find time to make videos or practice law. So, oh boy. Daniel Kester says there's a game console that could send faxes, the 3DO. I was unfamiliar with that. You know how long it's been since I actually sent a fax? I'm betting it's probably been 15, 20 years. I've received a couple, but yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, Christine Gagnon got 2 phone numbers, one for the computer, one for the house. Then you find out the computer's making phone calls behind your back. Oh boy. Anvil Creek Lodge says you should get safety caps for those fence posts, bright orange mushroom caps. Help protect people they fall on the post. If they make them, I haven't seen them. I'll take a look. I mean, anybody who falls on that's trespassing to begin with. Because I can't imagine the FedEx guy did get out of his truck, but the only people walking around those are me. But what are you gonna do? Andrew Kruchowski, who else misses the days of single speed CD-ROMs? Yeah, I was always amazed when you go to burn a CD, take the music off and put it on your hard drive. It's burning it like 12 times, and you realize these computers could actually spin those things much faster than necessary if they had to. So, Jay Allen, the fax is so inconvenient now. I absolutely can't stand people who insist on using it. Who still uses it though? I get the impression that there's still some people in the medical industry who use it. Mo Germ. Medical stuff often has to be faxed. No email. Don't know why. Marlon S. Breitling, do you own a Bentley too? No. I do own 2 Breitlings, but no Bentley. Of course, to buy a Bentley, that'd be a foreign car, wouldn't it? So there you go. I pity the fool. Do pink flamingos instead of posts. Yeah, but they'll still run the flamingos over. Wouldn't that be sad? Oh boy. Medical and 3-letter government agencies use fax. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if the government's using fax machines 100 years from now, just because. I mean, everything else they do is outdated when it comes to like technology, right? It's not me. 07 fax still used for weather on boats. Art S set up punji sticks on the edge of the driveway. Oh boy. MHOS says fax is more secure than email. I would believe that. I mean, I've never heard of anybody, hacking into a fax machine or a fax system, but I guess so. John N. Jr. Hi, Steve. I'm alive in Corpus Christi, Texas. There you go. There you go. Canadian robot lady. I'm old enough to remember learning computer commands at the root of C : / Yes, I'm a dinosaur. I remember that too. That wasn't like I say it wasn't that long ago, but I guess it was. Depends on your definition of long. I remember when I first got my computer, calling up a friend of mine who was a computer freak and having him walk me through the commands for doing things like, formatting a floppy disk and things like that. And of course, now they've resolved a lot of those things. Two left thumbs is put a mailbox on top of each post. Then it becomes a federal offense if somebody runs it over. Larry T says email is not HIPAA compliant. I may have said this before, but I have a fax number. I don't have a fax machine anymore. It's virtual. And I kept getting faxes that were being sent to me from a doctor's office containing diagnoses of people. So-and-so has got a rash on his thingy, And I would call the number that says, if you got this in error, please let us know. And I would call them and go, hey, I just got this fax. I don't know who you're sending this to, but I got it. And I go, what's your fax? And I tell them, they go, oh, we have a memory here in this fax machine. It's incorrect. We'll fix that. A week later, I get a thing. This patient has got this oozing stuff coming out of his, and I'm like, I call him again. I keep getting these. And the woman goes, we'll stop. And I said, but that's what you said the other day. And so the third time it happened, I think it was the third time, where I called the woman. I said, here's the deal. I'm no longer calling you. And she goes, good. And I said, I'm going to start calling your patients. And I'm going to block my caller ID and just say, hi, I'm calling because your doctor just sent me this stuff. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what you've got. It never happened again. It never happened. And this is the kind of thing that blows my mind. Is I could have been doing that all along. I was trying to be nice, and I called him several times. And so it finally did stop. And I guess my fax number was one digit off of some, like an insurance company or something, fax number. But I've had situations like that where I'm trying to explain to somebody that it's in your best interest to fix this, and they don't because they're lazy. They're lazy. So yeah, Canadian Robot Lady says in Canada, doctors and pharmacists often communicate via faxes, which is antiquated, but again, it complies with laws and is unhackable. Alethea says a doctor's office sent me an incorrect email containing information like that. And that that could scare you. Art asks, how would you deal with a 351 Windsor engine made in Canada? No, when I talk about American-made cars, I'm not with the badges. Ford, GM, and Chrysler are American companies. I don't care what anybody says. Steve, Stellantis is owned by people in another. Ford, GM, and Chrysler are the big three. And then, of course, there's, AM General or American Motors and so on for the oldies. But Andrew Kruchowski says, don't forget about Hudson and DeSoto. Yeah, there's a bunch of others. They've never owned a Hudson or a DeSoto. Dan Boyd, next car, a Pontiac Beaumont. I'm not familiar with a Pontiac Beaumont. Mark Miller, would you own a 60s or 70s Javelin? I like the AMX. I think the AMX is a cool car. And I've owned a Gremlin, as pointed out previously, many times. Andrew Kruchowski says, of course, the best car manufacturer in American history, the Tucker. I wrote a book about Tucker. Actually, I saw Tucker yesterday. I was at my good friend Mark Lieberman's place, and he has currently under his roof Preston Tucker's personal Tucker, and he used to own it. There it is, right there, and a little better, a little better, and it's you can't tell it's badly lit, but it's actually gray or silver, and Mark actually owned it for a while. He sold it to somebody else, but now he's restoring it for that person. And you might go, well, wait. If he sold his Tucker, what else has he got? He's got this little thing called a Ford GT, which I believe is 12 miles on the clock. So there you go. But that's what I did yesterday afternoon. Duncan Campbell, would a BMW built in South Carolina count as an American car? No, of course not. It's BMW, the German. See, you have to understand, it's a very, very simple mindset. And I've told people before, I have no qualms about you buying a foreign car. I just never have. And I have got my own rules. But growing up in Detroit in the 1960s, that's what everyone did. Mark Miller, yes, it's a Ford GT. Andrew Kruchowski, SGT40. And I believe they're officially called just a GT. So. Carl's Corner GT, 200,000. I mean, value, I think it's worth more than that. It's a one of a kind. Mark Lieberman ordered that car and got it. And he picked a car that's never been used before or since. I don't believe in any of those cars. So Kelso Cortez, have you ever owned a motorcycle? No. But I can tell you, but I can tell you, and I hope to do more stories on it in the future. But my brother is building a motorcycle that is really, really cool. And he's got some nice bikes, but he's building something that's very, very cool. So one of these days I'll talk about it. Oh, Najkan, did you get the book Pig Latin I sent as a gift from Amazon? Yes, I did. It's sitting on my desk of books to be read. I will probably read it in the next month or so. I apologize, but I am buried in books. And right now I'm about 100 pages into a 500-page book, which is one of my favorite books I've ever read. So, Keith Missney, what's a Matador? A Matador is one of the designs by AMC. I know people who are AMC fans, but American Motors Design Studio put out a bunch of really ugly cars. And they also like some odd names like the Marlin, the Gremlin, Matador, the Javelin. Some of these things had a bit of a rhyme to them. So it's not me 07. This is the Ford GT is probably worth around $600K or more. That's getting more like it. Chief FC, would you keep a foreign badge car if it was a gift or if you won one? Yes, I would, because then I could always say I've never bought a foreign car. Oh, Dustin Carpenter, did FedEx respond to your video? No, I can't imagine FedEx has got time to respond to videos on YouTube. Maz, most bikes have a clutch, so Steve doesn't want one. What's wrong with clutches? I like clutches. I've got two vehicles with a clutch right now. Jason Brindamar, Steve's a lawyer, very unlikely to own a motorcycle. He already knows better. You know, I'm not against motorcycles. I've driven motorcycles. I've ridden motorcycles. I'm thinking about buying a mini bike. but that's another story altogether. So it's not me 07. My car is from Canada. It's awesome. Well, you know, the funny thing is, there are a lot of American cars from Canada. And I used to joke with my dad about how he had a Ford built in Canada while my mom drove a Honda built in America. But again, I go off the badges. Dan Boyd, the Marlin was kind of cool. Dustin Carpenter, some of the AMC cars are still great considering that they had such fewer resources. Yeah, no, I see that also, but I've seen some of their cars and I'm like I kind of see where they went out of business. I know Gremlins have got a cult following on Pacers do also, but man, those are some ugly cars too. And I know because I owned one. So JBDFD, we need mini bike cruise video. Well, I need to get a mini bike first. So once I get one. Joey C, Honda Grom or an old school? No, an old school mini bike. I had one as a little kid. Like a 5-horse Tecumseh, pull start, just one speed, and a single brake handle. And half the time you use your feet to stop anyways. Oh, Art asks if you get a mini bike, we need a picture of you on it. Oh no, I'll shoot videos on it. I'll mount cameras to it. But I mean, I can't ride it around out in the road, but I'll find some place to drive it. Lewis Browning, the AMX with a 390. Only thing I never quite knew is I never saw enough data as to how fast those cars were. The AMX looked cool. I mean, it looked cool, but I don't know how fast it actually was. Jay Allen, what about planes? You know something? Planes and boats, man. Get a friend who has one. You're done. You don't you don't need that hassle. I used to share office space with an attorney who was a pilot. He had a twin engine, and he flew all the time. And he loved things like when there'd be a court hearing up in Saginaw. He'd fly to it and fly back. The weather was good, and he would tell me about how much it cost to have those engines done, tune-ups and inspections and annuals and all this stuff. And you listen to people complain about the cost of owning a boat. An airplane is the cost of owning a boat, but like squared. It's like you need to have money to burn to own a plane and fly it regularly. Cyberdox is a Honda mini trail, or is it just a trail? 125cc be perfect. Too complicated. I literally want to be able to walk out to my garage, pull start, go get my mail, and come back. That's my dream, is me going out to get my mail on a mini bike. Oh. Dan Boyd likes the AMX in the red, white, and blue livery, Penske's theme. I don't remember if it's Penske or not, but there was a red, white, and blue one they had that was very, very cool. John N. Jr. owned an AMC Concorde. Concorde. Was that a renamed? There were a couple of cars that they kind of like rebadged, but they were basically the same model from year to year, but they're just kind of changing the name and remarketing. I'm trying to remember what the Concorde looked like. And yeah, Sam as I am, the AMC Pace was a goldfish tank on wheels. My mom had one, and one of my brothers had one briefly, and they were odd. They had interesting sight lines because they purposely put the glass in the places where you normally had blind spots. That was one of the arguments they had for all that glass. So Johnny C. Bradley says the Honda 50. Yeah, Honda made a bunch of little tiny, like Honda mini trails. They're very, very expensive though. But I'm not looking for something complicated or expensive. I simply want, like I said, I'd be happy with a 3.5 horse or 5 horse Tecumseh mini bike with just the basic frame and the handlebars. Doesn't need a light, doesn't need a horn. It needs a gas tank, and that's basically it. Chief FC says, my uncle was a public school teacher and owned a Piper. Yeah, there are some planes that are inexpensive to own, but they still are expensive to maintain. And one of the other problems that living in Michigan, our weather is sketchy. I've known people who lived in California or Arizona who said they had so many good flying days, or Colorado, and they said that Michigan is not the same. Yeah, Dan Boyd, the Eagle, AMC Concorde. There you go. Samazam electric bike makes more sense. That's not my fantasy. Electric bikes are interesting. I think they're cool. I've never owned one. Dustin Carpenter, the movie Gung Ho was based on an AMC like independent. Most of the factory scenes were shot in Brazil. I saw that movie not so long ago. I'd forgotten about it. Michael Keaton, and he plays the role of a union guy who's trying to save a factory that the head honchos want to shut down. And he convinces them that if he gets the team to pull together the good old American way, can they save the factory? And I won't ruin it for you, but it was pretty entertaining. I liked it. I remember seeing it back in the old days. Rody Z, Steve wants the $500 Briggs bike. I think I've seen them on eBay, and I've also seen them on Facebook Marketplace between about $500 and $700. And for one that runs well, I'd pay $700. But I haven't gone to look at any just yet. I will one of these days. MH08 has almost run over by somebody on an e-bike last week. If hit, who do I sue? You sue the rider. They are what we call the tortfeasor. They did it. Sue them. Now, if the bike was owned by somebody else who lent it to them negligently, you might have a claim there. But you always start with the person at the center of the story. Canadian Robot says we can ride e-bikes up the mountains in the area. So you ride the e-bike up and you coast back down? Is that the key? Ember Miss 69, hi, Steve, and all. Janice Ellery, people actually abandon boats here in Florida. Big problem. That happens a lot in a lot of places. There's actually a running joke about people abandoning boats in Detroit and news stations pulling the VINs and then tracking down the owners. Hey, we found your boat. Johnny Quest Marketplace Coleman mini bikes usually fetch $200 to $500. I've looked at those, but something about them looks off to me. I think, is that the one they sell at Tractor Supply? And I've seen a mini bike, for instance, at Home Depot. And I'm looking at it going, I don't know. It looks kind of dorky. It's like I don't want something made for the husky fellow that I am. Because I know a mini bike will be able to support me and I'll be able to drive it. I'm not looking for something like, oh no, this is actually built for people who want to go out in the woods and go exploring. No. I want a toy I can goof off with. That'd be a mini bike. Art S says, Steve, remember after 20 pulls and a failure to start, the mini bike will be relegated to the back of the garage. Yeah, but all you got to do is keep fresh fuel in it and make sure the carb doesn't get clogged up. And the key there is simply daily usage. Daily use. I'm talking about using this thing every single day or almost. My brother, the one who's into motorcycles, got a mini bike. I tried to buy it from him, but he wouldn't sell it to me. And I remember years ago when he first got it, he had a gigantic yard. And I went over there for 4th of July, Memorial Day, one of those holidays. And I see him go to the garage. He wheels his mini bike out. And we spent hours just doing laps around his yard. And it was the most, we had mini bikes growing up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a mini bike. I need one. Sam as I am says, David, never laugh at the RE20. Is somebody laughing at the RE20? Who would do that? No, David Downey Fowler. He's calling it out. He is he's not laughing at it. He recognizes that the RE20 is what you use. And if you're podcasting, don't be using one of them Shure SM7Bs. Don't do that. So David Downey Fowler says, afternoon, Steve. Thank you for checking, my friend. I appreciate that. He, of course, is one of the guitarists in Australian Pink Floyd. Aussie Pink Floyd is right now in Florida. If you're in Florida, any place near where they are playing, check them out. I will personally vouch for them because I've now seen them play 5 times on 2 different continents in 3 different countries. It's true. The shows are amazing, and they replicate the sound of Pink Floyd like the record. Not like Pink Floyd live, but Pink Floyd, the studio sound, okay? Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, The Wall. This year, of course, is the 50th anniversary of Wish You Were Here. Hence, they will play that album track for track at least once all the way through as part of the show. So I highly recommend that you go see them if you can see them. Aussie Pink Floyd. Look them up. And David, thank you for checking in because I know that you're probably right now getting ready for a sound check wherever you might be in Florida. So there you go. Rody Z, some of the best memories of family can be the simplest. Oh, you got that right. You got that right. Carl Johnson over a retired Shriners mini bike. If I got something retired from the Shriners, shouldn't I get one of their little mini cars? Oh boy. Tiger Man 99515. Why not get a go-kart? Well, the go-kart can't go as many places as a mini bike, and my property is such that a go-kart wouldn't help me much, but a mini bike would. Janice Ellery, where in Florida? You'd have to take a look. I know they're either in Fort Lauderdale right now, they just were. But if you look up their website, Aussie Pink Floyd, Google them, you'll find them. And they've got a list of all of their upcoming shows, and you check it out. And so David Downey Fowler says, in a hotel today, enjoying your live stream. So it might be a night off for the band. So that's kind of cool. Rags707 says, mini bike kits are available. You can build it yourself precisely how you want it. So, and Johnny Z. Bradley points out Rick Beato just did an interview with David Gilmour. I saw that. That's amazing. Rick Beato right now is living his best life. Started shooting videos on YouTube as a lark, and now he's got millions of subscribers and gets to interview people like David Gilmour. Oh boy. Cyberdoc, I left my 125cc sit too long a year or so ago, and cleaning the carb was a nightmare. I ended up buying a new carb. My brother was telling me about rebuild kits for the carburetors on the mini bike he's got. And he goes, it's no big deal. Just, and he goes, but if it gets that far, it's not that hard to do. So yeah, Canadian Robot Lady points out that poor Rick Beato is getting the runaround from UMG. And the situation is that you may notice I don't have any music on my videos. And there's a reason for that. If I put music in a video, the people who own the rights to the music can then contact YouTube and go, hey, he's using our music. We should get all the money from his video. So Rick Beato uses little clips of music, which should be considered fair use under copyright law, and they still claim it. And so he had to hire an attorney, and he's fighting all these copyright claims. And it's got the point where he's won a claim against the company, and they just file another claim on the exact same piece of music and the exact same video. And he's like, what? You guys can't do that. But they've got some algorithm someplace just spitting out hate mail, claiming all of his videos. And so he's putting up a fight. So the guy's righteous right now. He's putting up a fight, and he's doing it on behalf of anybody who uses music on the old YouTuber. So there you go. Janie Seagrass keeps insisting I need a helmet. I have a helmet. I've got a helmet for when I'm going mountain biking. Rody Z says avoid the ethanol. I saw your earlier post there too. There you go. Janice Ellery says the Who was recently here in Fort Lauderdale, and I can tell you that I read an interview recently with Pete Townsend, who was talking about how disappointed he is now that the fans don't want to hear anything new. All they want to hear is the old stuff. He goes, at this point, we're basically a Who tribute band. But I get his point, and I've heard artists talk about how they get sick of wearing the same thing or playing the same thing over and over and over again. And it's but people come to see you for the first time in 20 years. It's the first time they've seen you in 20 years. I mean, to you, the song, you played it last night. They haven't heard it live in 20 years. Play it. Take the money. Oh, David Downey Fowler, can he sue for harassment? Probably not. But what he could do is complain to YouTube and say, hey, I think they're violating your rules. And YouTube claims to have rules on that stuff, but they're not terribly well enforced about people violating the copyright infringement claim process. Jason Brindamar says the RIAA contacted our band once claiming that we owed them money. We never played covers. We were all original. Wow. Fly Chomper Fly says, I saw Pink Floyd at the International Jazz Festival in France. Got my Piper at the Gates of Dawn album signed by all of them, including Gilmour. Wow, that's pretty cool. And Peanut Butter 19 says, of course, it's a band called The Who. H-U. I'm familiar with them. I'm trying to follow these conversations, but some of them confound me. Hazel Montgomery reminds us that Ricky Nelson went to a garden party. Jay Klein, Sirius XM just debuted a new Metallica channel. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Dan Boyd, cover bands having to pay royalties. Well, that's somebody wrote the song, they've got the rights to it. I'm curious because I see a lot of bands play covers in bars, and I suspect they ain't paying royalties. Keith Missney, did you talk about Mark Volmer? Volman today or recently? I did a video on the second channel about Mark Volman and Howard Kalin. I met them backstage at the Russellville Ballroom in the late 1980s at a show that was sponsored by a radio station I was working at. And I got my picture taken with them. I put the picture in the video. So it's up on my backup channel. Fly Chomper Fly. I know Beato's been battling copyright issues on YouTube for years. I love his channel. Yeah, and the thing is, like I said before, Louis Rossman's fighting us, fighting the good fight for us on right to repair, and Rick Beato's fighting the good fight on fair use, fair use. So, Keith, no, we did not talk about Mark Volman much today, but Mark Volman was one of the two guys primarily known. They were known as Flo and Eddie. But Mark Volman and Howard Kalin. Mark Volman just passed away a couple days ago. But also they were in the Turtles, Happy Together, Eleanor, You Baby, things like that. And great music. And the guy just passed away, and that's very sad. So David Downey Fowler, who would know, said it's covered by the various agencies such as ASCAP and PRS. So anyone can play anyone's song live, and royalties are collected via a percentage of ticket sales. So it's taken care of that way. Johnny Z. Fradley says a bar would have a yearly umbrella license for bands to play covers. And that would explain it being taken care of at the door and not by the band. Tigerman 99515. What was the deal with John Fogerty and him suing his record company? Or was it his former band members? Okay, this is a fascinating story that I'll condense in about 45 seconds. John Fogerty was in Creedence Clearwater Revival. Primarily, he was a songwriter and singer, and the band had some monstrous hits. He decided to go solo and become John Fogerty, a solo act, and he had a bunch of hits also. But the problem is that the contract he'd signed with his original record company was so oppressive that the record company took possession of his musical rights and so on, so that when he went solo, he had to start over again. And the record company watched his solo stuff and said, some of that stuff sounds like the stuff that we own the rights to. And so they actually sued him for, in essence, plagiarizing himself. So he countersued them and said, no, I have a sound. And when I write a song that sounds like me, that's not me plagiarizing my old songs. It's just that I sound like this. This is my sound. And courts agreed with him, and it was in appeals forever. He won, and he also set an extremely important precedent because when he won his case, he goes, I want my attorney fees paid by them. And they made the argument and said, well, no, this is a copyright thing. We sued him. He can't get the money from us. Court said, yes, he can. So it was ugly fight. But yeah, in essence, he was sued for sounding too much like himself, which is very, very strange. So it was a record company, as several people have pointed out, but yes. Ram 50 V8, I'm 61. My sister's 75, so I grew up listening to a lot of great music. I have the exact same thing. I had 5 older brothers. And so I grew up listening to stuff that came out 10 years earlier. And I grew up into it. Some of it was already kind of old music, So there you go. Mad at artists should own the rights to their own works. Well, they generally do to begin with. But what happens is they sign a contract that says, in exchange for this, you give up this. And there have been some examples. If you ever want to see some really sad stories about bands getting ripped off, read about the Goo Goo Dolls. The Goo Goo Dolls. The Goo Goo Dolls had a couple of gigantic songs, a couple of gigantic albums, and their record company had them sign a contract that literally made it to where the more records they sold, the more money they owed their record company, which is funny on one level. And a judge looked at this and said, wait, this cannot be considered conscionable. And one way you can get a contract voided is if it's unconscionable. And so some people go, yeah, but they signed it. Yeah, a bunch of kids sign a contract saying they're going to get a record deal. Who read it, And so the contracts have got to be relatively conscionable. And the idea that the more records you sold, the more you owe your record company. And by the way, Eddie Van Halen and the Van Halen boys and the rest of the guys in the band had a similar problem with the first couple albums they put out. But it wasn't just album sales for them. It was the cost of promotion and touring and so on. But in the book, Brothers by Alex Van Halen, he says that they finished one tour and one of their managers said, hey, by the way, good news, guys, you're almost broke even. You've almost broken even now. And they're like, wait, we've got these albums that are all gold and topping the charts and we're selling at concerts. Yeah, you've almost paid back the money that you owe the record company. Almost. So, everything stage lighting. I forgot Lou Pearlman was the absolute master of ripping his bands off. Yeah, Lou Pearlman was the guy who put together a bunch of little of those boy bands. And, to his credit, he knew there's a market for this, and he'd go out and find the right kids and then send them someplace and teach them to sing, teach them to dance, do makeovers for them, and then turn them into little hit-making bands. But my understanding is that he also used rather oppressive contracts. So David Peterson Badfinger had a really bad management contract. I think a lot of bands did. Sad Mountain Man, love Alex on the drums. Yeah, a lot of people, think of Van Halen as Eddie. Don't forget Alex on the drums. And of course, the music was good too. So Janice Ellery, didn't McCartney buy back some of his music catalog? Yeah, there's a whole weird stuff going on there. And I don't want to get into it because some of that I'm not that up on. But somewhere along the line, Lennon and McCartney gave up a bunch of their musical rights for financial reasons, I believe. And while they didn't have them, McCartney says that he talked to Michael Jackson and said, it's a great investment these days to buy musical catalogs. So when the people who owned the Lennon-McCartney catalog put it up for sale, Michael Jackson bought it. And I've heard an interview with Paul McCartney where he said, I wanted to buy it, but he outbid me. And so Michael Jackson winds up owning the Lennon-McCartney, much of the catalog. And later on, of course, Michael Jackson mortgaged it and borrowed money against it, and he wound up, and it got sold off. He's gone now, so it got sold off. But I'm not sure what Paul McCartney has of his music catalog. The older stuff, I still think he might not have that. 116-3562. Hello, Mr. Steve. How are you doing today? I'm doing fine. I used to have a client who called me Mr. Steve. He was from another country and an accent. And so it sounded almost like majestic when you say, Mr. Steve, how are you? That just reminded me of that. So MHOA doesn't like Van Halen. Okay. I know I assume you're joking, but I saw Van Halen twice at Cobo Hall, once in 1980, once in 1981. I was backstage at the 81 concert, and they put on a good show. Those kids did. Art asked Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Oh, Florida Bart Fast. Have you seen the latest performance with David Lee Roth? Oh, I was never a David Lee Roth fan. I mean, he was on stage at the two shows I just mentioned, but he was the weak point in the band. I mean, there's no question about that. And as far as just people go, like humans go, he's not a great guy. But so there you go. Dead Dog Rising suggests contacting a lawyer before signing a contract. It's something people are always told, and yet many people go, "Well, I can't afford an attorney." Well, ask the Goo Goo Dolls now if they should have ponied up a couple $100 for an attorney. Um, I once had a disc jockey call me up and say, "Hey, someone gave me your number. Apparently, you're an attorney, and would you be willing to review my contract?" And I said, "Well, it's not my specialty, but I'd be happy to because I'm morbidly fascinated. 'Cause I worked in radio at the time. I was just a lawyer." And they came into my office. They brought their contract, and I read and so it was the first time I'd ever actually looked at a contract for a disc jockey that was going to get hired to work at a major radio station in Detroit. And I was kind of surprised because it was a midday person, was not morning, was not afternoon, but midday at a decently sized radio station. So I got to see what they're being offered and what incentives they had and so on. Is a fascinating thing. But the funny part was, even not being an entertainment lawyer, I could go through the contract and say, okay, just to let you know, this says this says this says this. Understand that? Only thing I was not 100% on was what the industry traditions were. So I couldn't speak to whether or not what they're being offered is good money. And so I told the person that and said, just so you know, I can't speak to that, but I can tell you what all these clauses mean and what happens there. So it's actually an interesting thing. And she signed the contract and it worked out for her. So there you go. Jay Klein says David Lee Roth's a terrible live singer, as bad as Vince Neil. Yeah, no. The thing is, I always thought that Van Halen would have been better just as an instrumental group. No, David Lee Roth is what you call uh, passable, meaning that he does the job. But according to Alex, when they first went into the studio with the producer pulled the brothers aside and said, "Guys, can we get rid of the singer? He's horrible. Why are we using him?" So Janice Ellery says Sammy Hagar is better. And Fatty Butterpants says David Lee Roth was a showman. Sammy Hagar is a musician. Yeah, and that's the thing is David Lee Roth was born to be jumping around on stage, making a fool of himself. And if it works in the context he's in, then great. It works for him. But you know, he's over the top. And those guys had so much talent in the rest of the band that it kind of pulled him along. But I do think he detracted a little bit from the now. So Ella Theus is my friends, a professional performance. Super interesting to see what's in their contracts for various things. Michael Krause is someone's as bad as Vince Neil might be the worst insult for a singer. Mogram, Aussie Pink Floyd is in Missouri. They're touring all over. I'm not sure where they are right now. I know that they were in Florida yesterday and possibly today. NS Geek wants to start an argument. When is the world going to admit that the Beatles are just an okay band? Lion Zookeeper says David Lee Roth had an ego bigger than any room he was ever in. And that is an understatement. Padre says you can always insult a singer by comparing them to Tiny Tim. Brandon 5799, worst singer ever was Axl Rose. You know, I was never a big Guns N' Roses fan, but I worked in radio at the time of Guns N' Roses was huge. There was a time when you'd drive through any town and just count the Guns N' Roses T-shirts on the teenagers. It was insane how much money they made. Oh, Mark Miller or Milli Vanilli. Well, interestingly enough, the music of Milli Vanilli was good. It just wasn't them. And that's a really odd thing because the songs that were presented as being by those two guys, the songs were good, but the two guys faking the band was a problem. But I still argue to say some of the music was quite good. LGRFBS, what are your thoughts on the YouTube channel Wings of Pegasus? I love that guy. I've corresponded with Phil. Phil is a guy from England who's in a band called Wings of Pegasus. And he started a channel where he talks about music, and he's gone down this rabbit hole, which has become his thing. So you've got Louis Rossman, Right to Repair, Rick Beato with Fair Use, and Wings of Pegasus, Phil. And what he does is he gets live recordings of performers, and he runs it through software to show you on a chart whether or not they're singing live. Because so many people use pitch correction or auto-tune nowadays that it's scary, including bands you've heard of and bands you like. And that's the really scary part. And he'll get a recording someplace, and he's got the software that isolates the vocals, and they put it on a chart. And if you see the vocal doing natural things, he'll go, okay, that looks natural to me. And then it'll pull something else up, and you'll see it snaps to a line. He goes, nope. If I had to guess, that's probably being corrected. And what's bizarre is that he's found situations where someone's come out and performed something live, then the recording was taken and released as a single or an album as a live recording, and between the performance and the recording, it's been corrected, so that if you buy the version that was sold, it's different from the live version. And the live version was simply sung live and sounded great. And for some odd reason, these producers can't just go, oh, it sounds good, leave it. Well, we can clean it up a little bit. And some of the artists that they're cleaning up, it's scary. They shouldn't be doing that. And I'm not going to get into it here as to which artists he's pointed out, but please, please, if you do nothing else today, look up Wings of Pegasus on YouTube and check out Phil and see who he's narking out today. I'm endlessly fascinated by his channel. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Steve says, I'll probably start a fight, but I believe Sting is the best lead singer ever. I remember reading an interview with Elvis Costello back in the early 80s where he said something effective. I like the Police, but I wish Sting would just get rid of that fake accent. Doesn't he have a weird, he's got a bit of an accent when he sings for some weird reason? And it's not a British accent. But I like the Police a lot. I was just never a big Sting fan. But I'm not ripping on him. I'm simply pointing out I was never a big fan. So there you go. Jay Klein says, I like Guns N' Roses. As their target age group when Appetite was released. Axl is an underrated songwriter. I like November Rain. November Rain's a great song. It's a couple minutes too long, perhaps. The video is overblown. But it's a great, great song. Andrew Kruchowski says, don't make perfect the enemy of the good. Okay. Ram 50 V8 reminds us of the Wrecking Crew. Amazing talent, huge number of bands they were involved with. A lot of people don't understand that, but a lot of music you heard that came out of Detroit, like Motown, or out of Los Angeles in certain time frames, there were simply studio musicians who played on everything. So a lot of Beach Boys records didn't have the Beach Boys playing instruments on them. They were singing, but not playing the instruments. And then the Beach Boys would later learn the parts and tour with it. But the records were always better than the band was because the band was nowhere near as good as the people like in the Wrecking Crew. And so that's one of those things. They've gotten more attention lately, but for a long period of time, people just assumed that, oh, yeah, that's That's Al Jardine playing guitar on California Girls or something. And in the studio, it might not have been. It might have been a member of the Wrecking Crew. So Jason Brindamar says the first guitar solo on Knocking on Heaven's Door still makes my arm hair stand up. Are we talking about Slash? What I always liked was when Buckethead toured with Guns N' Roses. If you don't know who Buckethead is, you probably don't need to know. But there's a guitar player who calls himself Buckethead, and he plays with a bucket. You'll never guess where. On his head. And he is a virtuoso. He's a force of nature. I don't know I don't know how to describe the guy. But he's constantly releasing music. He never appears in public for the most part without the bucket on his head. He also wears a mask so you can't see his face. And he purposely speaks only through his music for the most part. And go onto YouTube and find I'm trying to think of an example of a good song. I'm drawing a mental blank right now. But he performs solo. He has backing tracks and he just plays guitar to it. But he is so good that it's like he's on a different level of guitar playing. And for a period of time, he toured with Guns N' Roses. And so you can find a live version of Guns N' Roses with Buckethead doing the guitar solos. And there's a guy on stage with a bucket on his head. So LGRFBS points out that today, Milli Vanilli would not receive any criticism at all, given that many people are already doing the same thing. They'd still get a little criticism because they weren't actually the people who sang either. But blah, blah, blah. I heard Buckethead is the unknown comics brother. There you go. You know what's funny? Imagine how good you have to be taken seriously playing the guitar with a bucket on your head. Soothsayer. That's a song, Soothsayer. Look up Buckethead live, Soothsayer. And just watch his hands and listen to the music. And then go watch any other guitar player and you're like, oh, this guy's on a different level. Tigerman99515 says the Beach Boys in concert at Anaheim, early 80s, great performance. Don't think Brian was there with the group then. I've mentioned before, I saw the Beach Boys about a dozen times. I saw them one time with Brian. I forgot what year that was at Pine Knob. He only toured that 1 year in that long stretch of time. And then, of course, they lost Dennis, they lost Carl, and then Brian was not touring with them anymore. The band kept touring on and off with, Mike Love and Al Jardine and so on. But yeah, Brian Wilson, I got to see him one time, so that's pretty cool. Mark Miller says, yeah, guitar virtuosos would be like Joe Satriani or Steve Vai or Buckethead. It's kind of funny because that name does kind of stand out, doesn't it? Padre, CNC Music Factory got sued by Martha Walsh for someone else singing her part in the video. And, that's the funny thing is I think she also was upset because did she get credited for having sung at all? Yeah, I don't know if he has got a song called Jordan. He's got literally hundreds of songs out and countless albums that he self-publishes. Tigerman99515 says, yeah, I grew up with the Tijuana Brass. Herb Albert. And just so you know, and somebody may have pointed this out, that might be why it's here. There was no band, the Tijuana Brass. It was just whoever Herb Albert rounded up for that tour. It was him and a bunch of musicians. Vienticus Prime says, surprisingly, the best concert I've seen was Weird Al. Just see him this summer because he's touring right now with Puddles Pity Party. Puddles the Clown. I've seen Puddles. And I'm telling you right now that among the performances I've seen in my adult life, and I've seen a lot of shows, Puddles was one of the most amazing performers, even though he's so non-traditional. He doesn't have a band. He's basically singing to a backing track, so it's like karaoke. He's a clown who's like 6'8". I met him after the show, got my picture taken with him. Great guy. Didn't talk to me because he doesn't talk. His renditions of songs are so good. I'm so glad to see that he finally got himself into in front of a huge audiences now. And I'm hoping that more people converted to appreciating the sad clown that is Puddles' pity party. He was on America's Got Talent a couple years ago. And if you don't know who I'm talking about or are unfamiliar with this, please go to YouTube. You can go now. I'll give you permission to leave early. Go now and type in AGT, America's Got Talent, Puddles, and Chandelier. His rendition of Chandelier is short, but it's so amazing. It's stunning. The first time I saw that he existed was I saw that performance. I was watching AGT years ago. And out comes this giant of a clown. And he is 6 feet, 8 inches tall. Doesn't talk. They ask him some questions, and he kind of mimes his way through it. And they go, okay, well, go ahead. And he starts singing and belting it out. And that's the thing, is that all his communication is silent except for when he's singing. And the place goes insane. Absolutely insane. So Puddles is one of my heroes. And like I said, I went to see him live, and they put up on the screen, they say, if you want to meet him after the show, he's going to be in the lobby. Jumped in line, stood in line for a couple hours, and then got up there, got my picture taken with him. And the funny thing is, he's not talking to anybody. And he's kind of clowning around, excuse that, but he's not talking. But it was just so cool to meet him, shake his hand, and get my picture taken with him. So there you go. Fly Chomper Fly reminds us that Herb Alpert had that Whipped Cream Other Delights album cover. There's a woman on the cover of the album, and she's covered in whipped cream and not a whole lot else. And boy, that was considered racy back then. Sam As I Am says, wasn't Puddles discovered on AGT? Well, that's where he first got it in front of a big audience. But he was known before that on YouTube. I didn't know about him before that. But I know people who said, oh, Puddles? Yeah, of course I know about Puddles. And it's just, yeah, his cover of Royals. He did a cover of the Lord song, Royals, 116-3562 points out. But, he's done so much stuff. But, and apparently, and I hate to ruin any of the magic of it, but he was in a band in Atlanta called King Size, which is a great name for a band fronted by a guy who's 6'8". I'm 6'2". This guy's towering above me. And somewhere along the line, he came up with this alter ego, and the whole outfit, but the performance, he changed the music he was doing. And it's just a whole thing. It's unbelievable. It's so cool. He's one of my favorite people. Yeah, Chuck Farley said he did a lot of gigs with Postmodern Jukebox. And you'll also see videos of him singing with Postmodern Jukebox. So it's amazing the shows, the things he does. Slaughter Bartfast also heard of him through Postmodern Jukebox. And but I mean, he's got some great solo stuff. He does a version of the Tom Waits song On the Nickel with just a guy who's playing a piano, which is one of my favorite videos of all time. It is so amazing. It's startling. And then when I saw him live, he did a song I've never heard before, which I think is a Burt Bacharach song, Another Tear Falls. And I remember hearing it at the show going, this is a cool song. And there's a video of that on YouTube also. And he's playing that, or he's singing that with some other musicians, more than just a piano. But Another Tear Falls. But his stuff is so good. It is so good. So Cyberdoc says, is Puddles a true tortured soul? That's an interesting question. Because, I mentioned at the top that YouTubers, I jokingly said, should all have a platform, something they're pushing, something that's their cause. Like, why not, if you're going to come out here and talk about something, make it worthwhile, So I talk about civil asset forfeiture, and I talk about, constitutional issues and things like that, qualified immunity. And so the interesting thing is, is Puddles doing this? Is it an act, or is that really part of him coming out? And I personally think it's so good that there is an authenticity to it. It actually feels like an authenticity. So I wouldn't be surprised if, yes, this is part of his tortured soul that he's exposing, and that could also be one of the reasons he doesn't talk. Why talk if you can express it that perfectly through song? So Chuck Farley says every professional clown is a tortured soul. Mike Torello says, hey, thanks, Steve. Fun shows. Always got to go put my 2x4s or my 1x5s times 3 by my 1.5s by 3.5s in the garage. Brandon 5799. Have you seen Estepario Siberiano YouTube channel? No, I've not. I'll check it out. Code Mr. Beats. I'm a check Puddles and Pegasus. Please do. Please do. Pegasus, Wings of Pegasus with Phil. He's a great guy. I've corresponded with him, but I've never actually met him. But someday I'd like to. He seems like a pretty cool guy. Or I'll go see his band play someday, maybe. Who knows? Mark Miller is kind of like Latka, Andy Kaufman from the TV show Taxi. Code Mr. Beats, they're both awesome. Art S. Was Jay Giles a better musician or a Ferrari mechanic? What I always liked about that's another band named after the person who wasn't singing. Because, of course, Jay Giles, I believe, is a guitar player. Henry Nissen and hi, Steve. Thanks to UP Travel Tips a couple months back. Loved Lehto's passes. I'm going to Lowry's passes as well if you're ever in Marquette. Lowry's is good. And so is Muldoon's in Munising. Depends on where you are at lunchtime. I actually did not eat at Lehto's this past weekend, but I did stop at a rest stop, or a truck stop restaurant. I was standing in line, and a guy walks through and goes, hey, you're Steve Lehto. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Dan Boyd, I always thought Ringo had the weirdest solo material of any of the Beatles. Didn't dislike his songs, though. Wasn't he like Octopus Garden and Maxwell Silverhammer? Weren't those his songs? I could be wrong. Faticati, when an item is introduced into evidence, does the court have to use it for it to count as evidence? We need the court use it. If it gets introduced into evidence, it is simply in evidence. Then the whoever the trier of fact is, whether it's a jury or a judge, can then consider it for what it's worth. So think of admissibility as does it get in? Weight, W-E-I-G-H-T, is whether or not it gets used and how much it gets used for. So it's possible to put a bunch of junk into evidence that the jury goes, we don't care about that. It's there, but we don't care. On the other hand, something that doesn't get into evidence can't be considered. So it's evidence if it gets admitted. If it's not admitted, it's not evidence. But it doesn't have to get used. That's up to the people who are making the decisions. So there you go. But that's going to wrap it up. We just hit the 3 o'clock hour. Thank you very much. I had a great time. Good to get back in here. We skipped last week for the holidays. I will see you all next week. Hopefully, I'd look at the calendar, but I'm always wrong. So what are you going to do? But I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.